I was looking at some industry stats this morning, and I mean, the scale of what we're about to discuss is just, it's honestly hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
We always hear that video games are bigger than Hollywood and music combined, revenue-wise. That's old news.
Right. That's been true for a while now.
But I'm more interested in the time metric. We are talking about billions, literally billions of hours of human attention.
Focused. Intensely focused attention. It's the difference between, say, watching a window and actually living in a house.
Okay, explain that.
When you watch a movie, you're an observer. But when you play a game, you're an inhabitant. You have to follow the rules of that house to, survive.
And that is exactly where we're going today. We aren't just talking about which console is better or the latest graphics. We are doing a deep dive into the hidden. Well, and sometimes, frankly, blatant.
Blatant.
Right, the ideologies embedded in all that code. We're looking at research from Quentin Alvarez and others to figure out when you pick up a controller, are you just having fun or are you being trained?
It's a question of agency, really. We like to think we're the ones in control because, we're holding the gamepad.
Of course.
But the research suggests that games function as soft power tools, as economic arguments, and as these powerful cultural persuasion machines.
And this goes way beyond just shoot the bad guy. We're going to unpack how the U.S. government used a blockbuster shooter for recruitment. How an oil company basically rigged a city builder to make renewable energy look weak. Yeah, this was my favorite. Why playing a game wrong might actually be the only way to understand another culture.
To frame this whole thing, we almost have to bring up Marshall McLuhan.
The medium is the message.
Exactly. But in video games, I'd argue it's more that the mechanics are the message.
The rules themselves.
The rules, what the game allows you to do, and maybe more importantly, what it punishes you for doing. That constraint, that's where the persuasion happens.
Okay, let's test that theory. Let's start with the most direct example in our notes. I mean, we can't talk about ideology in games without talking about America's Army.
The granddaddy of serious games, for sure.
It really is. For anyone listening who wasn't online in the early 2000s, this wasn't some, cheap educational flash game. This was a AAA quality first-person shooter developed and published by the U.S. government.
It launched in 2002, and it ran all the way until 2022. And you have to remember the context of 2002. High-speed internet was just becoming a thing. PC gaming was exploding.
Right.
And here comes this incredibly polished tactical shooter that is 100% free.
That was the disruption. It was Counter-Strike quality, but zero cost. Which meant, of course, it ended up on millions of computers.
Yeah.
But looking back at it now, the design choices were so specific.
They were calculated. I think the most brilliant mechanic and the most ideological one was the perspective. It was always first person.
Which is standard for the genre, but you're saying there's a psychological layer there.
Absolutely. When you play a strategy game, you're like a general moving pieces. You're detached.
You're above it all.
In an FPS, you look down the barrel. You are the soldier. It forces this immediate psychological identification. You aren't watching the U.S. Army. You are the U.S. Army.
And they did that really clever thing with the multiplayer, didn't they? Because in most shooters, one team is the good guys and one team is the terrorists or whatever.
Right. But the U.S. Army obviously couldn't have American teenagers logging in to play as terrorists killing American soldiers. I mean, that's a PR nightmare.
Of course not.
So they used a trick of perception. Every single player on their own screen saw themselves as the American soldier. The other team always just looked like the generic opposing force.
So no matter what side of the server you were on, you were the hero. You were the U.S. soldier defending freedom.
It created this singular, unbreakable perspective. You could never inhabit the other. And then you have the honor system. This is where it goes from a recruitment tool to a behavior modification tool.
So.
In Call of Duty, you can run around, jump off roofs, shoot wildly. In America's Army, if you violated the rules of engagement, like if you shot a civilian or disobeyed an order, your honor score dropped. If it dropped too low,
You get kicked out.
Yeah.
You literally get discharged from the game.
It enforced discipline. It sold this vision of war that was clean, rule-based, professional. It sanitized the absolute chaos of actual combat to make it appealing to, 13-year-olds?
Which is wildly effective. It's gamifying the entire career funnel. But, okay, if America's Army is about complex simulation to build empathy for a soldier, the example from China is.
Well, it's the complete opposite. It's almost startlingly simple.
You must be talking about Clap for She.
Yeah. This came out around 2017 from Tencent. And I think calling it a game is almost generous, but it was downloaded 400 million times.
The mechanics are fascinatingly reductive. You watch a 19-second clip of President Xi Jinping giving a speech, then you have a button, and your only job is to tap that button as fast as you physically can to generate applause.
That's it. Just tap to clap. That is the entire loop. But think about what that mechanic enforces. In America's Army, you have agency. You choose your weapon, your tactics.
Sure.
In clap for Xi, your only available interaction is enthusiastic agreement.
There is no boo button. There is no remain silent button.
There isn't even a listen quietly button. The game demands active, high-intensity support.
And 400 million downloads. I have to assume a lot of that wasn't just people doing it for fun.
It's hard to verify, but the context suggests social pressure. You know, corporate employees, party members, posting your high score becomes a proof of loyalty. It's a digital rally.
That's Pavlovian.
It trains the muscle memory of applause. In a way, yes. It leaves, as the research says, very little room for interpretation. It's just a pure injection of ideology through repetition.
So we have the government side, recruitment and loyalty. But I want to pivot to the corporate side because I think this is where the persuasion gets, sneakier. Governments are usually a bit ham-fisted.
Yeah, they can be. Corporations are subtle.
And the classic case study here is Energyville.
Yeah.
Which, on the surface, looks like a generic educational game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Commissioned by Chevron in 2007. The pitch was, hey, run a city, manage the energy crisis, see how hard it is.
Right. And see how hard it is the key phrase. The game gives you options. Solar, wind, oil, gas, nuclear. It presents itself as this neutral simulator of physics and economics.
But the physics in the game had let's say, a corporate bias.
A massive one. If you try to play the game as an environmentalist, say you only use wind and solar, the game punishes you. Your city's lights start flickering, industry shuts down.
Yeah, it's rigged.
The game mechanics are coded to make renewable energy seem unreliable and incredibly expensive.
So the game doesn't pop up a text box that says solar is bad. It just makes you lose if you use it.
Precisely. It creates a frustration loop. The player thinks, wow, I guess the technology just isn't there yet. We need oil for a stable budgeline.
That's the procedural rhetoric concept from the notes, right? Ian Bogost's term.
Yes, Bogost is brilliant on this. He argues that we're used to analyzing rhetoric in word speeches, articles. But in games, the argument is in the processes. In Energyville, the algorithm is the argument.
So Chevron isn't debating you.
No, they're forcing you to inhabit a world where their product is the only logical solution to winning.
That is so much more powerful than a commercial. In a commercial, I know you're selling me something.
Right, your guard is up.
In a game, I think I'm just learning a system. I lower my guard.
You adopt the goal of the game as your own. To win, you have to think like Chevron. And once you think like them to win the game, maybe a little bit of that logic sticks with you in the real world.
It reminds me of those racing games where you have to choose real-world tire brands. You pick the Bridgestones or whatever because the stats say +5 grip.
And you aren't analyzing the marketing.
No. I just want to take the corner faster.
And suddenly, in your mind, Bridgestone equals high performance. You didn't read it, you experienced it. That's the power and the danger of procedural rhetoric. It bypasses the critical part of your brain that filters out ads.
However, and this is a big however, we can't just assume players are empty vessels that just get filled up with whatever the developer wants. I mean, humans are messy.
We are very glitchy receivers of information.
I love the study about the McDonald's video game. This was the satire, right?
Yes, developed by Mull Industria. It's a really scathing critique of the fast food industry. You play the CEO, but to keep profits up, you have to do things like destroy the rainforest, bribe health inspectors, pump cows full of hormones. The game is screaming at you, look how awful this system is.
It's an anti-ad.
That was the intent. But researchers tracked a group of about 190 students playing it, and they found that while playing the game helped them understand, there was a message awareness went up about 15%. The actual interpretation was all over the place.
The interpretive divergence.
Exactly. Even after a debriefing, where they discussed the satire and understood it intellectually, a significant number of players admitted that the game just made them hungry.
Laughs. That is incredible. They're canalizating the Amazon in-game, corrupting the government, and their brain just goes, burger.
It's the satire paradox. You can't simulate a burger in a game, even an evil, corrupt burger, without making it look appetizing on some basic level. The visual of the thing overrode the intellectual critique.
It's like when people say there's no such thing as an anti-war movie because combat on screen, it always looks exciting.
Precisely. Gonzalo Frasca, a game designer and theorist, he put it perfectly. Even if the designer proposes rules, it is always the player who decides.
Right.
You can design a game to denounce capitalism, but if the mechanics of making money are fun, players will just enjoy being a capitalist for a while.
So the message isn't guaranteed to land. But let's zoom out to the macro level. We've talked about specific games, but this is playing out on a geopolitical stage. We need to talk about soft power.
The ability to influence through attraction rather than coercion, yeah. And right now, the global gaming map is a huge battlefield for this.
And the U.S. has been the undisputed heavyweight champion for decades.
Unquestionably. I mean, think about Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption. Even when GTA is making fun of America, it is centering America. It's exporting American cities, American music, American slang to teenagers in Tokyo and Berlin and Rio.
It sets the default setting of the world to USA.
It does.
Yeah.
But we're seeing other players enter the chat. Japan has always been there, of course. I mean, Nintendo is practically a synonym for video games. But look at how they use it. Ghost of Tsushima is a fascinating example.
And that was developed by Sucker Punch, an American studio, right?
They are, which makes it even more interesting. The game functions as massive Japanese soft power. It sells a very specific, very romanticized version of the Bushido Code, honor, nature, this kind of poetic violence.
Yeah.
It frames Japan as a place of deep spiritual history. It's basically tourism marketing wrapped in a samurai duel.
And then you have China. For a long time, they were just a market to sell to. Now they're the ones exporting.
Tencent is the giant in the room. They own huge stakes in Riot Games, Epic Games. But look at something like Black Myth, Wukong.
Oh, that game blew up online.
And it's significant because it's not trying to be a Western RPG. It is unapologetically rooted in Chinese mythology journey to the West. It's forcing the global audience to learn their stories, their names, their history.
It's a confidence flex. We don't need to make a game about knights and dragons. We're making one about the Monkey King, and you're going to love it.
Exactly. But this cultural exchange isn't always balanced. You found that bit of news about CD Projekt Red, didn't you?
Yeah, and this actually made me a little sad. So CD Projekt Red, Polish studio, massive pride of the nation. They made The Witcher. They're working on the sequel to Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
And they announced they're opening a major studio in Boston to make it.
Why Boston?
Well, their statement was basically that to make a truly authentic cyberpunk game, they needed to be in America. They needed to capture the American vibe properly.
Wow. That is such a stark illustration of a cultural hierarchy. Even a top-tier European studio feels the pressure to Americanize its output, to be seen as authentic in a genre that's, rooted in American dystopia.
It suggests that we aren't really getting a global village. We're getting a homogenized culture where you have to adapt to the dominant player to survive.
It's a homogenization of our digital imagination. If everyone is designing for the American market or the Chinese market, all the unique local voices get drowned out.
Speaking of distinct voices and the difficulty of understanding them, I want to touch on that last segment, the value of failure. Because usually games are about mastery. You learn the rules, you win.
But sometimes the most educational thing a game can do is just break down.
Tell me about this card game experiment.
It's a game called Barnga. It's used in training for humanitarian aid workers or diplomats, people going into high-friction cultural zones.
Okay, so how does it work?
You sit at a table to play a simple card game. Tricks, suits, looks very standard. But here's the catch. Everyone at the table has secretly been given slightly different rules. For you, ace is high. For me, ace is low. For the person across from us, diamonds are the trump suit.
And you don't know the other people have different rules.
No. And the kicker, you aren't allowed to speak.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
It creates instant visceral frustration. You play an ace, thinking you've won. I take the card. You get angry. You think I'm cheating. I think you're stupid for not knowing the rules.
Because in your head, you're following the rules perfectly.
Exactly. The game just quickly devolves into confusion and hostility.
I feel like I've had this exact experience trying to order food in a country where I didn't speak the language. You think you're being polite, the waiter looks offended, and you have absolutely no idea why.
That is precisely the simulation. The game here isn't the cards. The game is the emotional simulation of entering a culture where all the hidden rules are different from yours.
The failure is the lesson.
The breakdown is the message. It teaches humility. It forces you to realize that your common sense is actually just cultural programming. If America's Army teaches you to dominate, Barnga teaches you to listen and observe.
It's a powerful counterpoint to all the power fantasies we usually play. It uses the medium, to make you feel powerless.
Which is an ideology in itself, the ideology of empathy.
So let's pull all these threads together. We've gone from the blatant recruitment of the U.S. Army to the reflexive loyalty of Clap for Xi. We've seen how Energyville codes an economic argument right into its win conditions, and how global soft power dictates who gets to tell the stories.
And we've seen that players are wild cards who might just get hungry instead of getting the message.
Right. But I think the takeaway here isn't to stop playing games. It's to start seeing them.
I agree. We need to be media literate, but also mechanic literate. When a game forces you to do something to win, you have to ask yourself, why is this the winning strategy? What is the developer trying to teach me about how the world works?
Because if we don't ask that question, we're downloading someone else's worldview directly into our habits.
And in an era where we spend billions of hours in these virtual worlds, that is a very, very real kind of power.
So here is the final thought for you, the listener. We quoted McLuhan saying, "The medium is the message." If the video game market is now this massive globalized battleground for soft power, is it even possible for a modern video game to be completely neutral? Or is the act of playing always, on some level, an act of submission to the designer's ideology?
Something to chew on the next time you press start.
Thanks for playing along with us on this deep dive. We'll see you in the next lobby.